From the story, everyone refused to bond with the blind and disabled alien princess, except this human. HFY. The throne hall of Zenara Prime was filled with glowing lights, tall banners, and the sound of royal music echoing through crystal walls. Aliens from many worlds had come, dressed in their finest robes, armor, and jewelry. They all waited to meet the royal family, especially the heirs of the empire. Then, the room grew quiet. The golden doors opened, and in came a floating chair. Smooth and silver, it carried a young alien princess, her skin pale like moonlight, her long silver hair flowing gently over her shoulders. Her eyes were white and blind, her legs motionless under the smooth gown she wore. A small scar crossed her cheek, and her hands trembled just a little as the chair moved forward. No one bowed, no one spoke. In fact, the nobles and warriors looked away. Some turned their backs, others whispered cruel words to each other. "That's the broken one," someone muttered. "She can't even see," said another. "What a waste of royal blood." The princess said nothing. She had heard it all before. Her name was Princess Sira, and though her body was weak, her mind was sharp, sharper than most. But none of them cared about her mind. They only saw her blindness, her disability, her floating chair, and they judged her without ever trying to know her. Near the side wall, a human stood quietly. He wasn't a guest or a noble. He was just a janitor, wearing a plain dark uniform with silver lining. His name was Jack Carter, and he had been working on Zenara Prime for only 3 months. Jack had seen many strange things in this alien empire, but this moment stopped him. He watched as everyone avoided the princess like she was invisible, or worse, cursed. He felt a chill, not from the air, but from the coldness in people's hearts. She didn't choose to be like this, he thought. Why are they treating her like garbage? As the event continued, nobles laughed, exchanged gifts, and drank glowing drinks, but Princess Sira sat alone in her floating chair. In the far corner of the room, nobody approached her, not even her own cousins. Later that night, long after the lights dimmed and the music faded, Jack was cleaning the hall alone. He saw the princess's chair parked silently by the balcony. She was still there, sitting under the stars, alone. He paused, unsure if he should go near, but something pulled him forward. Quietly, he picked up a clean warm cloth from his cart, walked to her side, and placed it gently on her lap. He didn't speak, but his actions said enough. The princess didn't react at first. Then her hand slowly moved, feeling the cloth. Her head turned toward him, even though her blind eyes couldn't see. "Who's there?" she asked softly. Her voice was calm but carried a deep sadness. "Is it another mocking noble?" Jack didn't answer. He was scared to speak, afraid of breaking the moment. The princess tilted her head slightly. "No, you're not one of them," she whispered. "You don't smell like wine and perfume." Jack smiled quietly, then started to step back. But before he could leave, the princess whispered again, "Will you return, human?" Jack paused. He didn't know why his heart was beating fast. Maybe it was the way she asked, not with command, but hope. He turned slightly and nodded. Even though she couldn't see, the stars above them glowed a little brighter, and the wind brushed through her hair gently. She sat still in her chair, holding the warm cloth like it was something precious, something rare. No one had touched her gently in years. No one had stayed near her without fear or disgust. But tonight, someone did. That small act was more powerful than any royal speech. Because in a world where everyone walked past her, one human had stopped. One human had seen her. Asterisk from the story. Everyone refused to bond with the blind and disabled alien princess, except this human, HFY. The next evening, the stars were hidden behind gray clouds, and the palace lights flickered with cold blue glow. Jack Carter finished his cleaning early, but his mind wasn't calm. He kept thinking about her, the blind alien princess, sitting alone on her floating chair with that soft voice that still echoed in his ears. "Will you return, human?" she had asked. Now he was standing again in the silent hallway, Staring at the same balcony, he looked around. The guards were gone. The nobles were still at a feast in the other wing. Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward. Princess Sira was there again, her body wrapped in a simple cream cloak. The warm cloth he had left her yesterday rested neatly in her lap, as if untouched but cared for. "I knew you would come," she said suddenly. Without turning her head, Jack froze. "How did you? I may be blind, but I'm not unaware," she replied with a small smile. "I heard the shift in the air, the hesitation in your step." Jack came closer and leaned against the railing next to her chair. He didn't know what to say. So many words were in his head, but none felt right. Sira spoke again. "You didn't laugh." Jack blinked. "Laugh? Everyone else does when they think I can't hear," she said, her voice quiet. "They whisper things, call me useless, call me decoration, a failed royal experiment." Folded neatly in her lap, the way her shoulders stayed still but firm. "You don't seem like a failure to me," he said, finally. For the first time, she turned her face slightly toward him. Her white eyes, though blind, held strength. "Why do you say that?" Jack shrugged. "You're here, still calm, still strong. I've seen soldiers with both legs and eyes break under less." A soft laugh escaped her lips. "Not cold or bitter, but warm, gentle. You speak like someone who knows what breaking feels like." Jack looked down at the floor. His jaw tightened. "Yeah, I do." There was silence for a while. Only the faint hum of the city outside the palace walls. Sira broke it with a surprising question. "You're not just a janitor, are you?" Jack looked at her, unsure how to answer. "You walk like a man trained in battle," she continued. "Quiet steps, careful movements. A servant wouldn't know how to approach without being seen." Jack let out a small laugh. "You're good," he said. "I was a soldier once, Earth Coalition, during the border wars." "Why did you leave?" she asked, her voice still soft, but her mind clearly curious. "I lost my team," he said quietly. "I was the only one left after the ambush." Sira lowered her head slightly. "I'm sorry." Jack shook his head. "Don't be, it's war." She turned her face to him again. "It was war that did this to me too," she said, touching her leg gently. "A blade meant for someone else." For a moment, they just sat there, not as janitor and princess, not as human and alien, but as two broken souls who understood pain. "You're the first person to talk to me like a person," she whispered. "Not a pity project, not a royal curse, just me." Jack looked at her with honest eyes. "Maybe it's because you are just you," he said, "and that's worth knowing." The wind brushed her silver hair gently across her cheek. She didn't move it. She didn't need to. Jack leaned closer, not touching her, just letting her know he was still there. "I don't know why I came back," he admitted. "Maybe I just couldn't leave you sitting here alone again." Sira gave a tiny smile. "Then let's make a deal." Jack raised an eyebrow. "A deal?" "Yes," she nodded slowly. "If you come back again tomorrow, I'll tell you something I've never told anyone." Jack smirked. "Is it a royal secret?" "Something better," she said, her voice now almost a whisper. "A vision only I can see, even without my eyes." Jack stood up and looked at her one last time before stepping away. "All right, princess," he said. "You've got a deal." As he walked away, her blind eyes followed the sound of his steps, and though she couldn't see the world, she felt something brighter than any light growing inside her, hope. The grand hall of Zenara Prime had never looked so bright. Rows of alien banners danced in the cold air as music played from crystal instruments. It was the day of the royal bonding ceremony, a tradition older than any war or peace treaty. Here, chosen males from powerful houses would form mental bonds with royal females, bonding minds to guide the empire's future. But one royal wasn't on the list. Princess Sira sat quietly in her private chamber, her hands folded, her blind eyes staring ahead into silence. Her floating chair hovered in place, untouched, unwanted. Servants moved past her as if she wasn't there. Some glanced, then quickly looked away. She had asked weeks ago to be included in the ceremony. She had been denied. You cannot bond if your body is broken. The High Counselor had told her, your mind is sharp, but no noble would risk bonding with someone like you. Sira didn't argue. She had learned long ago silence speaks louder than tears. But today, someone else had a different plan. Down in the lower levels of the palace, Jack Carter stood in front of the mirror, wearing a clean uniform, not his janitor's suit, but a formal robe he had borrowed from the old storeroom. He looked uncomfortable, but determined. He had spoken to no one, told no one. He simply walked toward the great hall, past curious guards and shocked nobles. At first, no one dared stop him. He was human, and humans were strange, but when he stepped onto the ceremonial floor, the music stopped. All eyes turned to him. What is the meaning of this? Barked the High Counselor, his long neck twisting in confusion. Jack stood firm. I wish to offer my bond to Princess Sira. Laughter filled the hall, cruel and loud. A human? Bonding with her? Does he even know what a mind bond means? Someone remove the janitor. But Jack didn't move. He turned to the guards. Then bring her, and if she refuses me, I will leave quietly. There was silence, tension, then a servant rushed off. Minutes passed. The hall buzzed with angry whispers. Then she arrived, floating in slowly, her long silver hair flowing down her shoulders, her blind eyes glowing faintly in the soft light. The room grew quiet again. As if something sacred had entered, Jack stepped forward and knelt in front of her. I offer you my mind, he said softly. Not because you are royal, but because you are strong. Sira's lips trembled. She hadn't been given a choice in years. Everything in her life had been decided for her. Until now, she reached out slowly, her fingers brushing his hand. The bond began. Everyone gasped. A faint golden glow appeared between their joined hands. Lines of light stretched from her fingers to his, from his thoughts to hers. Inside her mind, doors opened. Jack found himself standing in a world of light, stars, and floating memories. He saw her pain, her childhood, her dreams, the moment she was wounded, the loneliness that followed. She saw his war memories, his guilt, the blood on his hands, the way he carried. In that quiet space, neither was weak, neither was broken. They were complete. The connection deepened, stronger than anyone expected. The glowing bond became brighter, pulsing gently. The High Counselor stepped forward in shock. Stop this now. This is against the law of tradition. But an older voice spoke from the side. No, said the Empress herself, rising from her seat for the first time in hours. Let it finish. Everyone turned. The Empress walked forward slowly, her eyes locked on the bond forming between her daughter and the human. She smiled, not with pride, but with relief. My daughter has waited too long for someone to see her, she said. Let the bond be complete. Jack looked up at Sira, still holding her hand. Are you sure? He whispered. Sira nodded, tears in her blind eyes. Yes, she said, for the first time in years. I feel seen, and with that, the golden glow surged one last time, sealing the bond. The crowd stood in stunned silence. The blind and disabled princess had bonded, and not with a noble or a warrior, but with a human. Cliffhanger ending. As the bond faded, Jack turned to leave the floor with her. But someone in the shadows whispered into a come. The human must be eliminated before the bond becomes permanent. Asterisk from the story. Everyone refused to bond with the blind and disabled alien princess. Except this human. Jack Carter couldn't move. Not at first. He stood beside Princess Sira as the golden glow of their newly formed bond faded slowly from their joined hands. The great hall, once full of laughter and judgment, was now silent. All eyes were on them, but Jack didn't care. Sira, the blind and broken princess, didn't care either. Something had changed, something far deeper than anyone could see. As the ceremony ended, the royal guards escorted Sira gently back to her chamber. Jack was told to wait in the meditation room where bondmates often rested. He didn't understand what was happening to him. His mind felt different, clearer, and yet full of strange warmth. He sat alone, breathing slowly, then without warning, his eyes closed on their own. And he entered the bond realm again. It was a space unlike anything he'd seen before. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't a memory, it was her. The world around him was glowing like a floating sky filled with silver rivers, bright stars, and pulsing threads of light. Each star felt alive, whispering small sounds that made his chest ache with wonder. Then she appeared. Princess Sira stood in front of him, not in her floating chair, not with blind eyes, but walking, standing strong. Her eyes were bright violet, glowing with a power he had never seen before. Her body was whole here. Her presence was royal. "Calm and fierce, Jack," she said, her voice soft but echoing like music. "Welcome to my inner world," he blinked. "What is this place?" "This is my mind," she replied. "The real me, where I'm not broken, not weak." Jack looked around. Amazed. "It's beautiful." She smiled sadly. "No one ever asked to see it." He reached out to touch one of the glowing stars. "These memories?" "Yes," she nodded. "Each one is a part of me. Pain, joy, loss, love, hopes that never came true." Jack turned to her. "Then show me your pain. Let me carry some of it." Sira stared at him, surprised. Then she stepped forward and touched his forehead gently. In that moment, images filled his mind, memories rushing like waves. He saw her childhood, raised in golden palaces but kept away from others. Always watched, always warned. He saw the attack, the blade slicing through the sky, cutting into her spine. He felt her fear when she woke up and couldn't move her legs. Couldn't see. He heard her cries that no one answered. He saw the nobles walk past her like she didn't exist. He saw her learning to hide her tears, to sit still, to pretend she didn't feel anything anymore. Jack's eyes watered. "You were alone all this time." She nodded. "Until you came." Then the bond shifted again, and now she saw his memories. His team laughing on Earth's border camp, the explosion, the silence, the blood on his hands. She saw him digging graves alone, writing names he barely remembered. She saw him screaming in the dark, not from wounds, but from guilt. Sira reached out and held his hand. "You were alone too." Jack looked into her glowing eyes. "Maybe that's why we found each other." For a long moment, they stood there in the glowing stars. Hearts open, pain shared, not as a princess and a human, but as two souls no longer lost. Then the world began to fade slowly. Jack opened his eyes and found himself back in the meditation room. He felt warm tears running down his face, but he wasn't sad. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. The door opened gently, and a royal guard stepped in. "The princess asks to see you," Jack nodded, wiped his face, and followed in her chamber. Sira sat upright, a slight smile on her face. Her fingers tapped lightly on the floating armrest, as if her hands were regaining strength. "I saw your storm," she said as he entered. "You've carried it for too long. And you," he said softly, "you've been drowning in silence." They didn't need more words. The bond between them now wasn't just mental, it was emotional. Spiritual, something no council or tradition could understand. Sira lifted her hand slowly, fingers shaking, but she reached him. And Jack took her hand in both of his. "I want to walk again," she said suddenly. "I want to feel the ground under my feet. Even if I fall," Jack's voice was steady, "then I'll help you, every step." Cliffhanger ending. Outside the chamber, behind a hidden wall, a masked figure whispered into a communicator. "The bond is deeper than we feared. If she regains full strength, she could change the royal line. Prepare the next step." From the story, everyone refused to bond with the blind and disabled alien princess, except this human. The next morning, the sun over Zenara Prime rose slowly, turning the palace spires gold and soft blue. But inside the council chambers, the light felt cold and bitter. 12 members of the High Council sat in a circle of silver chairs. Each one represented a powerful bloodline, proud and ancient. Their expressions were sharp, their voices colder than ice. The human bonded with her, one counselor growled, slamming his clawed hand on the table. Princess Sira was never supposed to form a bond. Another snapped, his silver scales shimmering. She was the forgotten one, the silent royal. And now she walks through the halls with pride. Spat a third, speaking to servants, training with healers, smiling as if she belongs. She does not belong, the eldest counselor said, his voice quiet but full of weight. That bond must be broken or removed. They all turned toward the Empress's empty throne. She will protect the bond, one whispered. We must act before the human becomes more than a servant. Meanwhile, in a quiet garden beneath the palace, Jack and Princess Sira sat. Under a tree with silver leaves, her floating chair hovered close to him. But today her legs were wrapped in light pressure healing bands. Her fingers were already moving better, her shoulders straighter. Jack held a warm herbal drink, sipping slowly, watching her try to move her legs slightly. You're improving fast, he said with a smile. Sira looked at him, her blind eyes glowing softly. The healers say it's impossible, she whispered. But they also said I would never bond, Jack chuckled. You've made a habit of breaking rules, she smiled gently. Only the ones that needed breaking. Suddenly, a royal guard approached, his face tense. You are both summoned. To the High Council chamber, he said quickly, urgently. Jack and Sira exchanged a look. Her hand reached for his, and he took it without question. Inside the grand chamber, the air was tight with pressure. The counselor sat tall and still, eyes piercing like daggers. Princess Sira, the eldest said, we honor your presence. She gave a small bow from her chair. Counselor, the bond you have formed, he continued slowly, has caused disturbance. Sira nodded once. Because it was unexpected, or because it was human? A murmur swept through the council. Tradition matters. Another counselor barked. The royal bond must strengthen political alliances, unite noble houses, not waste power on a human servant. Jack stepped forward. I didn't come here to play politics, he said calmly. I only offered my bond because I saw her worth. Exactly, said another, leaning forward. You did this for emotion, not strategy. That weakens the royal image. Sira's voice turned sharper. You speak of image, I speak of truth. The room tensed. She continued. I was blind and broken, and none of you cared. I was treated like dust on the floor. But this human saw me and helped me rediscover my mind, my strength, and my value. One counselor hissed. Your value was always in silence. Gasps followed. Sira's fingers gripped the edge of her chair. Her voice did not shake. You fear what I may become, she said. Because I no longer sit quietly in a corner, you are not fit to lead. A voice snarled from behind the council ring. Suddenly, a noble warrior stepped into view, wearing the crest of House Vorn, a powerful family known for their bloodline arrogance. He pointed at Jack. You human have poisoned the mind of the royal daughter. You are not worthy of her bond. Jack didn't flinch. And what would you have done if I hadn't bonded with her? The warrior sneered. I would have left her to rot, like she was meant to. Jack stepped forward. Slowly, his eyes locked on the man. You just said more about yourself than about her. Jack said quietly, and you've proven why she deserves better. The chamber went silent. The Empress entered at that moment, her presence like fire wrapped in silk. Enough, she said, her voice thunderous. My daughter is not a tool, not a bargaining chip, not a forgotten name in our family. She walked over to Sira and placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. This human reminded me what true nobility is, she said. And if this council dares move against that bond, it moves against me. The council sat back. Beaten for now, but not broken. Cliffhanger ending. Later that night, in the shadows of the palace, a hooded figure met with the noble warrior from House Vorn. The Empress protects them, the noble said bitterly. The hooded figure replied coldly. Then the Empress will have to look away. Just once. Begin Phase 2. Remove the human. Asterisk from the story. Everyone refused to bond with the blind and disabled alien princess, except this human. The night sky above Zinara Prime was quiet, too quiet. Inside the palace, candles flickered in tall crystal holders, and shadows danced across polished floors. The royal guards moved through the corridors like ghosts, unaware that something dark had already entered. In her chamber, Princess Sira sat by the window, her hand resting gently over the bonding mark on her palm. Her mind still echoed with Jack's presence, steady, warm, unshaken. But something was wrong. She could feel it. The bond always whispered to her when Jack was near or safe, but now it was dim, clouded, as if something had wrapped around it, choking the connection. She sat upright, her fingers tapping her chair controls urgently. "Jack?" She called out softly, but he wasn't there, not even in her mind. Meanwhile, Jack Carter lay on the cold floor of a dim storage room. His hands were tied behind him with a metallic restraint. His head ached from the blow he didn't see coming. Two masked figures stood nearby, one of them holding a plasma dagger. "You should have left when you had the chance, human," the taller one growled. Jack didn't flinch. "If you're trying to scare me, you'll have to do better." Second figure kicked him hard in the side. Jack coughed but smiled through the pain. "You bond with a royal, and now you think you're special," the masked man hissed. "But you're just dirt, a speck on noble boots." Jack's voice was low. "She's more royal than any of you, and if I'm dirt, then why are you so afraid of me?" The taller one raised the plasma blade, glowing bright red, but before it struck, an explosion of light filled the chamber. The door blasted open, and a shockwave of energy through the attacker's back. Standing in the doorway was Princess Sira, her floating chair shining, eyes burning with rage. "You dared to touch him," she said, voice trembling with power. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood her mother, the Empress, and two royal guards with drawn weapons. "Seize them," the Empress commanded within moments. The attackers were disarmed and dragged away. Sira rushed to Jack, her fingers shaking as she touched his face. "You're hurt," she whispered. Jack looked up at her, surprised. "How did you know where I was?" "I didn't," she said softly. "I felt you, later in the healing chamber." Jack lay on a bed while Sira sat beside him. "You broke protocol," he teased with a weak smile. "Blasting through walls like that," she smiled faintly. "I'll break every law they throw at me, if it means protecting you." Jack looked at her, eyes tired but full of something deeper, trust. "You didn't have to come alone," he said. "I wasn't alone," she answered. "You were with me, even in silence." She placed her hand on his chest gently. "And now, I'll make sure this doesn't happen again." In the days that followed, everything changed. The Empress ordered a full investigation. The traitor from House Vorn was arrested and stripped of title. The council was shaken. And for once they listened. Sira began physical therapy with advanced machines. Her body slowly responded, legs twitching, fingers moving with more control. Jack was by her side every step, not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as her bondmate. They trained together, meditated together, shared silence, laughter, and dreams. But one moment stood out above all. One morning, as the sunlight poured through her balcony, Sira gripped the side rails of a walking frame. Jack stood beside her, holding nothing but hope. She closed her blind eyes, took a deep breath, then moved one foot forward. Her leg shook, almost gave out, but it moved. Then the second, her breath caught in her throat, her hands trembled, and then, for the first time in years, she stood, unsteady, trembling, but standing. Jack's eyes filled with tears. He didn't speak, didn't clap, didn't rush to grab her. He simply stood beside her equal. Sira smiled through her tears. "The chains," she whispered. "They're breaking." Cliffhanger ending. In a far-off chamber, deep under the palace, something old stirred. A hidden data crystal glowed on a forgotten console, playing a recording of the bond between Sira and Jack. A mechanical voice spoke softly in the dark. "The prophecy has begun, the blood of broken royalty and the soul of a lost soldier." shall awaken the throne's true power. Final part. The great hall of Zinara Prime had never held such silence. Every noble house, every counselor, every foreign guest sat waiting. Watching the empty royal stage, the Empress stood tall before them. Her face was calm, but her heart beat. Like thunder, beside her stood an empty chair, meant for her daughter. "Where is the princess?" whispered a noble. "She cannot delay the unity speech," another murmured. "Perhaps she is still too weak to appear." Some scoffed, some smirked, some simply looked away. Then the doors opened, and the world changed. Two figures walked side by side into the light. One was tall, quiet, his uniform simple, his presence steady. Jack Carter, the human, the outsider, the one they once called unworthy. The other was Princess Sira. She walked not, floated, not carried, walked. Her steps were careful, trembling slightly, but strong. Her long silver robe shimmered as she moved. Her glowing blind eyes fixed ahead. The crowd stood in stunned silence. No one spoke, no one dared. She reached the stage and paused, taking a moment to breathe. Jack stepped aside, letting her stand alone. She didn't need help anymore. The Empress's eyes filled with tears, pride burning through her soul. "Princess." Sira turned to the crowd, her voice clear and filled with fire. "For years I was hidden," she said. "Not because I asked to be, but because I was labeled blind, broken, weak." Murmurs spread, but none dared interrupt. "I was denied the right to bond," she continued, "until one man, a human, stood before me and offered nothing except respect." She looked toward Jack, her hand trembling as she reached for his. He stepped forward and took it gently, their bond glowing once again for all to see. "This man is no prince," she said, "no warrior of noble blood, but he saw me not as a burden, but as a person." Gasps echoed through the chamber. But this time they weren't cruel. They were stunned. Sira stood tall, her voice unwavering. "With his help, I broke the silence around me," she said. "With our bond, I broke the chains inside me." She turned to the Empress. "Mother, I ask your blessing, not just as your daughter, but as a leader."